I'm John Heilemann.
I'm Mark Halperin. With all due respect to the Republican candidates at last night's debate, only one of you can be the next Ronald Reagan. On the show tonight, everyone. But first, some breaking news, kind of. The most significant thing to happen since last night's Republican debate just happened moments ago on, of all places, Fox News. Listen to Jeb Bush returning to his posture from a while ago of speaking critically of the Republican frontrunner Donald Trump.
This reminds me of Barack Obama, not as a candidate, but Barack Obama as president. All he does is push people that don't agree with him down to make his side look better, and the divide makes it hard to solve problems. I don't think we're going to win that way. We should be talking about issues that give people a sense their lives will be better, not about how bad things are or the kind of language that is really, really divisive, that preys on people's legitimate angst. Did it get under my skin? Did it anger me that he retweeted a tweet saying that I'm soft on immigration because my wife's from Mexico? That is outrageous, unfair. My wife's an American, by the way, American by choice. She loves this country. She wants the border to be secure as well. So does everybody.
So compares Trump to Barack Obama, takes deep umbrage at what Trump retweeted about his wife, and makes the electability argument. Why is Jeb Bush returned to rhetoric like this when he passed on attacking him last night?
Doing on a Friday afternoon, late in a summer Friday, attacking Jeb Bush on cable when attacking Trump on cable when last night he had an audience of many, many millions, we now know, 23 million or whatever. I think earlier in this interview he made the suggestion that he thought he did excellently in this debate. That attack suggests that he knows that he did not do excellently in that debate, and that the commentary suggesting that he did poorly in the debate drove him to this. That looked desperate to me. It looked that is not a show of strength.
Bush was not disastrous last night. Nobody was.
I agree.
But he was not outstanding. He didn't dominate the stage the way I think some of his supporters would have liked. And some of his supporters today acknowledged to me he's got to do better in the subsequent debates. The frustration he has about Trump is manifest in that he's returning to this. Let's see if he keeps his posture up. If he does, he'll be the most aggressive person going after Trump at this point.
Well, let's be clear. I'm not saying he did disastrously, but there was a consensus that he did not do well. And I think he realized he missed a moment last night with Trump. This, again, this to me screams like, I screwed this up last night and I'm trying to fix it now.
He wants a reset on Trump. All right, last night, Trump did dominate the debate. And this morning, he phoned into a few breakfast chat shows to make the case that he did really well. Did he? In case you're suffering from post-Trumpatic stress disorder, here's some post-debate stuff that's very foxy, and then Mr. Trump himself.
The real story is the collapse of Trump. He was lost for most of the debate.
I had a great time. Some of the candidates I got to know, I never met, I didn't know, and they were really great people. I really had a wonderful evening.
When you walked in here, how many of you had a positive opinion of Donald Trump? Raise your hand. Overall.
That was done by a guy named Frank Luntz, who is a real dunce, frankly. I don't know where he finds the people, but I think he picks them. I think he handpicks them to say whatever they want. You know, he came up to my office looking for a job, looking for work, and then all of a sudden he's doing focus. I had no interest in him. So, you know, I don't believe in that focus group.
Rosie O'Donnell is a woman. She is not the things that he called her, and women find those remarks offensive.
The biggest applause of the evening was when I mentioned the name Rosie O'Donnell. The place went wild. It was the loudest applause of the evening. People got a great kick out of it, and we all got a kick. And it was an amazing evening, frankly, and probably got tremendous ratings.
You saw Charles Krautheimer there. Trump just took to Twitter in the last half an hour and went after Fox and Krautheimer for criticizing him, some of which you saw there. Lots of discussion about this already, but what's your view? Did Trump help himself last night overall, hurt himself?
My favorite two words in the English language are false binary. In this case, I think he neither helped himself nor hurt himself. I don't think that probably for most of Mr. Trump's supporters, the kind of people that I talked to in that focus group in New Hampshire last week, I don't think any of them are going to desert him on the basis of what he did last night. I don't think he gained a voter last night with this performance. He did not look particularly presidential. I think the format, when he has a lot of time to present himself in full Trump, he's a more compelling figure than in these shorter.
Excuse me, it could be Mr. Trump.
Mr. Trump on the phone right now calling to object to my characterization. That's my view.
Yeah. Look, I think that he could have been better than he was, but he so dominated. He talked the most. He dominated the news. I think he helped himself in one way primarily, which is he's proven that it is still the case, status quo. Trump dominates this contest. And although we saw Jeb Bush taking him on there, no one put a glove on him last night beyond the moderate.
And if he doesn't lose any votes, he's still got 20%, which still puts him in front. I'll just say it's interesting. Liberals thought he did well by his standards last night.
Right.
Conservatives are almost uniformly critical and dismissive of Trump
They're
last night.
thinking wishfully, not analytically.
Perhaps that's true. All right, next up, let's take a look at Marco Rubio's performance. After the debate was over, the senator from Florida was widely praised by pundits, analysts, centrist Republicans, conservative Republicans, for how he did on stage. But by this morning, it appeared that one of his answers last night had caused him a little bit of trouble.
You favor a rape and incest exception to abortion bans.
Megan, first of all, I'm not sure that that's a correct assessment of my record. I would go on to add that I believe all
You don't favor a rape and an incest exception.
I have never said that, and I have never advocated that. What I have advocated is that we pass a law in this country that says all human life at every stage of its development is worthy of protection. In fact, I think that law already exists. It's called the Constitution of the United States.
You were on that Bill 1670 that did have a carve-out for rape and incest, so it seems that you had your own record wrong. Is that something you want to correct this morning?
No, that's not true. Everybody supported that bill. Every single pro-life senator, every single pro-life group, including the Catholic pro-life groups, supported the bill you're just talking about.
But it included the exception.
Because it prevents abortion. I've never said that I will only support a bill that has an exception in it. But I will support bills that have exceptions in it because they prevent abortions.
So in the clear light of day, Marcus, and nearly 24 hours ante, did Marco Rubio do as well as many people said, including me?
I get why people think he did well, because he presents in a way different than everyone else, and his argument that he's the future is really strong compared to the other 9 people on the stage. But this abortion thing, it appears to us from our reporting today, he's never been asked to be clear. Does he support legislation? Would he like the law of the land to be no exceptions for rape and incest with women having abortions? That brings up, as on immigration, this factor with Rubio, which is he's slippery, but also he's never been pressed. And I think that if he has success, and we'll see if this well-reviewed performance moves him up in the polls, if he has success, I still believe he's going to have to deal with a lot more scrutiny than he's ever gotten.
Well, it's got to come some point, because he's, as you say, he has gotten very little scrutiny, and these questions, he is slippery on some of these issues. I'll just say, I thought, if you compared him to a lot of the people on the stage, the reason I thought he did well, that the elements that have always been true. He makes a compelling case for conservative policies. His personal biography is very strong. I'll tell you the other people, a set of people who really think he did well, people in Team Rubio. I ran into some of them in the airport in Cleveland, and they are mile high today about how well they think he did.
No doubt he did well, but that abortion thing, I think, is going to come back. The candidate who just barely made it on that stage last night, of course, was the Ohio Governor, John Kasich. He got a lot of time with some one-shots, backed by home crowd applause, made him seem like certainly one of the winners of the debate. He also answered a question on gay marriage that got pretty well reviewed. And in dealing with the tough question of accepting Obamacare Medicaid money, Kasich said this.
I had an opportunity to bring resources back to Ohio to do what? To treat the mentally ill. 10,000 of them sit in our prisons. It costs $22,500 a year to keep them in prison. I'd rather get them their medication so they could lead a decent life. Our Medicaid is growing at one of the lowest rates in the country, and finally we went from $8 billion in the hole to $2 billion in the black. We've cut $5 billion in taxes, and we've grown 350,000 jobs.
All right, so Kasich got a lot of praise from pundits. Obviously, the Medicaid position is not very popular. How much did Kasich help himself last night with what was clearly one of the stronger performances?
Well, look, first of all, I'll plug the piece I wrote about this, BloombergPolitics.com. I called him one of the winners, and I see Kasich as having big appeal. I then had second thoughts when I saw that Camille Paglia wrote a piece today saying that she thought John Kasich was the winner, and that's not a club I want to be part of. I think he barely made this debate. He got up in front of 23 million people and gave, for the kind of conservatism and the kind of candidate he wants to be, he was the best version of that candidate last night. And for a guy like John Kasich, who's never going to be a perfect fit with the base, that's the best you could hope for on that debate stage.
If Bush does not perform stronger, the weaker Bush looks, not just in the debates, but overall, the stronger Kasich looks to a large segment of the elites, and I think to a fair number of voters. I still think he's got a chance to become number 2 in New Hampshire by Labor Day. And if he does, people are going to start looking at his record. People kept saying, oh, he's going to be peevish and cranky. That's just not what he's like now on a regular basis.
Last night you heard conservatives over and over again saying that he was the charismatic, energetic, optimistic, comfortable version of Jeb Bush. And that is a good place if you want to be the Bush alternative.
The Medicaid thing, that is a problem.
I agree with that. I don't disagree. On the undercard debate, the one that took place at 5 o'clock yesterday, not a whole lot happened except for Carly Fiorina. Her very strong, fiery performance suggested that her presence would have made the main stage debate even more interesting than it was. And Fox News appeared so eager to include her that they played a clip of her during the primetime show. This is how Fiorina displayed her command of international issues.
On day one in the Oval Office, I would make 2 phone calls. The first one would be to my good friend Bibi Netanyahu to reassure him we will stand with the state of Israel. The second will be to the supreme leader of Iran. He might not take my phone call, but he would get the message. And the message is this: until you open every nuclear and every military facility to full, open, anytime, anywhere, for real inspections, we are going to make it as difficult as possible for you to move money around the global financial system. As important as those 2 phone calls are, they are also very important because they say this: America is back in the leadership business. And when America does not lead, the world is a dangerous and a tragic place.
Mark, I predict that one way or the other, she will be on the main stage at the next debate in September in Simi Valley, California. And she won't be at the kiddie table. But what do the people who are at that second-tier table, what do they take away from Fiorina's performance to help them elevate next time around?
Well, on one level, I was wrong because I was saying that that earlier debate had great opportunities. On one level, I think I was right. She clearly proved that you could have a breakout performance. Did. I think the other ones didn't come playing their A game. Now, look, she has done a lot of great things in terms of coverage, in terms of connection to voters in Iowa and New Hampshire, and hasn't moved up in the polls. I'm not sure it's going to help her, but I think she set the dynamic that, A, you can succeed there. Can more than one person succeed in that debate? I'm not sure. But her performance was not surprising to me because she's become a pretty good candidate and performer. People like Rick Perry, who did not do particularly well in that debate, I think are going to face a lot of trouble. If you don't perform as a star in the B debate, it is a problem.
I think, look, Fox News ran a great debate last night on the main stage. I thought the moderators were good. The whole thing was really well run. The undercard debate was not well run in this respect. They were in an arena with an empty, no audience. And I know for people like Lindsey Graham and others, not having any humanity in the room, just sitting there like at the empty baseball stadium at Camden Yards, that hurt them. I think that the CNN, when they do this debate, they got to do better in setting up a more debate-like atmosphere for them.
They will. All right, right in the middle of the debate last night, the Democrat Chuck Schumer, the senator from New York, came out in opposition to the president's deal with Iran on nuclear weapons. That is a huge development. Schumer's view has been waited for a while. John, does this affect the calculus and the president's chances of getting the measure past Capitol Hill?
I think it doesn't affect it. I think, in fact, it guarantees that it will get passed, or at least that there will not be the resolution of disapproval will be able to sustain a veto. I think Chuck Schumer would never be in this position unless he knew that the deal was ultimately going to get through.
Yep. Bernie Sanders, in an interview today, came out for the deal. Yep. There's still now Republicans would need to get almost every uncommitted Democratic senator to get enough votes to override a veto in the Senate, and the White House is relatively confident about where they stand in the House. So the Schumer thing's interesting, and it could, under a different scenario, change the outcome, but it won't.
But just to be clear to our viewers, the incoming Senate minority leader is not going to be the one who derails the president's signature foreign policy achievement. Chuck Schumer's a good vote counter. He knows they have the votes.
Fascinating that he did it. It's still not clear to me what he based it on, because it does put the president in the uncomfortable position of condemning Schumer the way he condemned the Republicans who opposed him in a speech earlier this week.
All right, coming up, Scott Walker, Ted Cruz, Chris Christie, Rand Paul, the professor, and Marianne here on Gilligan. Here on With All Due Respect. We'll be right back. Boy, oh boy, there sure are lots of Republicans running for president. So let's go through the other shining moments from last night and see what they might portend about the weeks to come. Starting with Scott Walker, who had a big zinger on Hillary Clinton's emails.
Probably the Russian and Chinese government know more about Hillary Clinton's email server than do the members of the United States Congress.
What do you think about Scott Walker last night?
I think he's going to get better in the other debates, even though he'd been a lot of debates in Wisconsin. I think the first national one, maybe he was not as loose as he could be, but he does need to get better. I don't think that level of performance is going to be good enough.
He's got to get off talking points. He looks too canned. On the other hand, I even had some Democrats last night who said he passed the intelligence seriousness threshold, which for him was an important thing to get done in this debate.
He was solid all night, as with almost everybody, but he does need to get better. All right, Ted Cruz's knowledge on foreign policy, Iran, and Russia on display here.
General Soleimani, you just mentioned, the Iranian general, is the head of the Al-Quds forces. He's directly responsible for the murder of over 500 American servicemen in Iraq. And part of this Iranian deal was lifting the international sanctions on General Soleimani. The day General Soleimani flew back from Moscow to Iran was the day we believed that Russia used cyber warfare against the Joint Chiefs. We need a new commander-in-chief that will stand up to our enemies and that will have credibility.
Too little time, too little optimism, I thought. How do you think he did?
I still think, I think what I thought he did, if you think about among those guys who were playing in that social conservative Tea Party bracket, I actually think he had a pretty good night. And on the basis of what I've heard about various focus groups and other things on the inside, they are happy with his performance. The Cruz people are. And I think he's like a sort of, he was a subterranean success in a lot of ways.
Again, I think everybody did pretty well. And I agree, maybe a subterranean success. But I thought he would have been more dominant. I thought he was going to do better.
Well, he did not. He was not like Mr. Master Debater out there. Exactly. You know what I mean? Exactly. Christie and Rand Paul. This was a highlight of the debate. They went after each other, hammer and tongs, over the issue of government surveillance.
I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from other people. How are you supposed to know, Megan? What are you supposed to, when you're sitting in a subcommittee just blowing hot air about this, you can say things like that.
I don't trust President Obama with our records. I know you gave him a big hug, and if you want to give him a big hug again, go right ahead.
Senator Paul, you know, the hugs that I remember are the hugs that I gave to the families who lost their people on September 11th.
I thought Chris Christie was pretty good last night. I thought Rand Paul sucked. And I thought that exchange illustrated Christie at his best and Paul at his worst. What do you think?
Rand Paul needs to find a message that can win over Republicans. Talking about national security over civil liberties over national security, talking about working with Democrats is not currently in step.
But it's also stylistic. The rolling of the eyes, he looked impatient, irritable, thin-skinned, all the things we know are weaknesses of his. They were all on display last night, and not just in that exchange.
All right, Huckabee and Carson, neither of them dominated. How do you think they did?
Well, I thought Huckabee did better than Carson. I got to say, Ben Carson still remains a mystery to me as a phenomenon. I understand his biography. I understand his appeal as an outsider. But every time he spoke, the energy level in that room just completely collapsed. He had a good closing statement, but the rest of that debate I thought was bad for him.
You know, Fox gave Trump much more time than anybody else, 3 times more.
After promising to strive for balance.
That was unfair. I'm surprised candidates haven't been complaining. But next time, we're going to have to see how do candidates deal with that? How do they go in? If you assume that CNN, with the next debate, is going to make it the Trump show as well.
That you might only get a little time.
Rand was the one who tried to engage. It wasn't very effective. Let's see, based on what Jeb Bush did earlier today, maybe by that debate, he'll want to be the one engaging Trump.
Hope so. All right, we'll be right back with the real star of last night's debate, Albert Reinhold Hunt Jr., after this.
Let's talk more about last night's debate with our colleague from Bloomberg View, Al Hunt in Washington. Al, Hillary Clinton and her team seemed pretty psyched about the debate last night. For an honest appraisal, should they have been happy? Was there anything last night that happened in that debate that should worry them?
Mark, I don't think it's one of the more memorable debates I've ever seen, so it may be all forgotten in a couple months. But I think for now, short term, Hillary and Democrats ought to be pleased. First, Donald Trump dominated. That's good for Democrats. And secondly, there was a little bit too much focus on and hard edge focus on abortion, Planned Parenthood, and the like. It's not the issue per se, but the emphasis and the tone. Well, I think that helped the Democrats.
I think if Democrats like this debate, at least one of the things they seem to think was in their favor was the notion that everyone on stage was competing for Trump's voters, which is obviously not a great position for the party. Do you agree with that? Was that what you thought was going on there?
Well, not really. I think they have different voters they're competing for. You know, when Donald Trump is leading the way he is, then you got to take voters from him. There's no question. But let me give you one example. I was in Iowa for 2 days, John, before we came to Cleveland. And I talked to a lot of evangelicals. There'll be 2 out of 5 voters in the Iowa Republican caucus. And Donald Trump is in first place in that group now. He will lose that vote. I'm confident. Donald is a lot of things. A cultural conservative, he's not. But that's why I thought Ted Cruz had a better than pretty good night last night, because I heard there's so much he said last night that I thought was just playing back what I'd heard from some of those born-agains in Iowa the previous 2 days. not just about God and faith, but I had several say, we really don't want to send a Boehner and McConnell go-along to Washington. That doesn't play well here. It plays well out there.
Al, based on what the candidate said last night and what seemed to play in the room, maybe, where do you what can we say about where the grassroots of the party is now? Where's the energy? Where's the focus?
Well, at least I'm just basing this on Iowa, Mark, because that's where I was. And boy, it is so up for grabs. Those evangelicals that I just spoke about really are they're all over the lot right now. Trump will lose a bunch of those. I think the battle will end up really between Huckabee and Cruz there, with Scott Walker getting a share.
And what are the issues that are animating them?
The issues really is they want someone who's tough, that they can be proud of, and that is going to beat the establishment. Yeah. I think they really care about that, because on the specifics, there really isn't a dime's worth of difference between them.
Yep.
Al, they talked about a lot of issues last night. They were going very quickly. There were some that were totally left out, like energy and climate didn't get talked about at all. But were there any issues, actual substantive issues last night, that popped up that you thought, because of the discussion, that they might pop up again and again and become more prominent in this cycle than we thought they might have been?
John, I'm going to defer to you and Mark on that, because I heard the debate, I read the transcript this afternoon, and I'll tell you, I can't find any sleeper issues. I don't think there was a single issue that came up last night that we couldn't have anticipated. So I may be missing something, but I can't think of one.
Al, in closing, the normal physics of a Republican nomination fight would say that this is all just a little bit of fun and light, and eventually Jeb Bush will be the nominee. After last night, after Bush attacked Trump today, do you think we're more or less likely to be on track for Bush to be the nominee?
A little bit less. I didn't think he had a bad night, but he just didn't look very exciting. He didn't look very like this is the guy we'd like to have as our leader. I thought Kasich had a good night. I could see him breaking out. If he breaks out, and he's getting a lot of support in New Hampshire now, that's really bad news for Jeb Bush.
Mark, what do you think the answer to that question is?
I still think until we see how Jeb Bush's super PAC spends tens of millions of dollars, it's hard to fully gauge that. But I was surprised at how uncommanding Bush was.
Your friend Dan Pfeiffer tweeted last night that if a candidate not named Jeb Bush had given that performance, they would be toast. And I think that's a little overstated, but not totally overstated.
Yeah, he's going to have to step it up. We'll be right back after this. Al, thanks.
We are only on the tube a half an hour a day, but we're live 24/7 on BloombergPolitics.com. Next week, late in the week, we head to Iowa for the Iowa State Fair. I know one of your favorite things to happen in a presidential cycle. What's your favorite food there?
I'm looking forward to the pork chop on a stick and Donald Trump at the fair.
That is going to be fantastic. All right, remember, we are on twice a day at 5 and at 8 p.m. Until next week, friends and neighbors and debate watchers, sayonara.